Welcome to Sterling Visionary Voices, the podcast dedicated to bringing you diverse, innovative leadership insights and actionable strategies for success. Join hosts Laura McNeil and Bob Medeiros as they explore the art and science of role model leadership through thought-provoking conversations with real professionals. Whether you're a seasoned leader or aspiring to excellence, Sterling Visionary Voices is your guide to navigating the complexities of your leadership journey.
According to a Forbes magazine article on tough leadership turned toxic, there are differentiators between tough leadership styles and toxic leaders. Some examples of these differences include tough bosses have bad days, while bullies are consistently bad. Tough bosses drive you to produce your best work, while bullies rule through fear. Tough bosses are tough on everyone, while bullies target specific individuals and play favorites with others. With us today is Dr. Rick Bame, a veteran of 21 years with the Navy nuclear program and a seasoned government leader currently employed with the Department of Transportation. Dr. Bame is known for his scholarly research and publications in the area of leadership and workplace bullying. Dr. Bame has over 30 years of instructor experience and is currently an adjunct instructor and lead with Southern New Hampshire University. He is a member of the Delta Mu Delta International Honor Society in Business Administration, Lambda Sigma chapter, and is a member of the Association of Leadership Educators. I'm really looking forward to this conversation given our 20 or so years of conversations, Rick. Let's start out with a background on your scholarly research. What drew you to this field of research? What are or were you hoping to accomplish?
That's an interesting question. I spent 21 years, on submarines in the Navy. You would think that there would be plenty of bullying going on in the military, but it was completely the opposite. It was a much more tight-knit unit, lots of respect, and people working together for common goals and stuff like that. So I retire at 42 years old and I go to work for a different organization and I find myself being bullied at work. It was quite a eye-opening experience. I never thought that I would be a target of someone bullying me. I was working on my doctorate and trying to come up with a dissertation topic, and I wrote this paper on bullying for an assignment for one of my classes. And my teacher said, "Oh, you got to do your dissertation on this. You got to do this on workplace bullying." I said, "Well, what a coincidence." I said, "My job I'm in now, I'm being bullied." I said, it's tough. It really wears on you like you have no idea. It drags you down. Every day you wake up and the first thing you think to yourself is, should I call in sick and not deal with it today? It has nothing to do with your job. It has everything to do with that person and how they handle things and how they make you feel. And it's really, really a tough thing. So my research helped me cope with it because it helped me understand what was going on and how I could develop ways to combat it, I guess you could say. So that's my story. What do I hope to accomplish? Pretty much open people's eyes to it. Human resources, unfortunately, is not always your friend as an employee. I think they're looking out for the interests of the company ahead of the individual employees, which makes it really tough. Or they put you in a position to where it looks like you're retaliating because maybe you got a bad evaluation or something to that effect. Or they put you on some kind of corrective action. So it looks like you're just trying to combat that by calling them a bully. The big thing about a bully is they bully the people below them, but the people above them, they kiss up and they kick down so that a lot of the senior leadership doesn't see it. And they think, oh, this guy's a stand-up guy. He's a quality leader and he's doing the right things. And that's how they get away with it for as long as they do sometimes.
Why do some leaders choose bully behaviors as their leadership style? What do they gain by that?
I have to say the biggest thing that motivates a bully is power. Power position. They want to be in those positions of leadership. This is my fiefdom. I'm looking down, and everyone is going to do what I tell them to do no matter what. The rules apply to all of them, and I will make sure that I enforce those rules, but they do not apply to me. I can do whatever I have to in order to keep my power base and be in charge. They will do anything to stay in charge.
That's really interesting. So it's about the power, and it's not about the value that they can incite in their team or the growth they can incite in their team to accomplish some of the really big strategic initiatives that this organization you all are working in have in front of them. Is that right? It's about the power?
It's all about the power. All these initiatives and everything, they want to be successful. But more important than being successful is that they get the credit for being successful. So they want to keep really good quality employees under them so that they have control of them, so that all the good things they're doing, they can take all the credit for. As a matter of fact, they'll tell people numerous times, you're not ready for the next step. You need to stay right where you are. I'll tell you when you're ready. And they train like mini bullies, I guess you can say. So a lot of the people they do take under their wing, not only do they train them to do their jobs, they train them to be bullies as well. They're helping him or her keep that power base. So, yes, success does drive them, but it's more important that they get credit for those successes.
Are certain organizational cultures more prone to being a petri dish for bullies over others?
Oh, yes. Everybody would think right away that most organizations that might have like a coercive or authoritarian type of outlook would be the big petri dish. But actually, the ones that probably breed bullies more than anything is the laissez-faire leadership style, because those are the leaders that kind of stay out of things and they just let them do what they're doing. You know what I mean? As long as they're getting some success out of it, they're not going to look in and see how the leader is doing things. They're just more concerned with results. And they're going to stay out of that person's way and let them do whatever they want to do, even turn a blind eye to it. So that, to me, is probably the worst leadership style that would cause bullies to develop in that organization.
Yeah, that makes sense. What are the different characteristics of bullies?
Well, in my research, I broke it down into like different themes. So I had the snake, the gatekeeper, the nitpicker, the screamer, the joker, the discriminator, the tyrant, and then I found this one called the reverse bully, which we'll talk about that one last. The snake is an interesting character because they kind of develop this false reality. They're showing upper leadership. He's showing them how he's working on developing all his people and everything is great, exactly how they want things to go. But in reality, he's bullying all the people. He's enforcing all his self-made rules and proclamations and things like that to get people to do things. And so, I always look at it in the Jungle Book, the snake, where he's like looking at him and kind of putting him under this spell. They kind of do that with the senior leadership in order to pounce on the poor workers and stuff that are trying to, just try to make a career out of it. And it's really sad to see this happen. And when you report them, people don't believe you because they think, oh, no, this guy's great. How can you say he's bullying you? It's not until you can give like rock hard evidence. They're very careful about putting things in writing and doing it in front of other people. They do it in front of people that are like they're in crowd, and they'll do it verbally. They won't put anything in writing. So that's one of the things there. The gatekeeper is kind of this one that has the in crowd and the out crowd. If you're on the in crowd, they share everything with you and they give you opportunities for success because it makes them look good. The out crowd, the people they don't particularly care for or might disagree with something they say, they give them assignments where they're trying to jump through a million hoops to get it done. And it's kind of like one of those unattainable things, unrealistic goals. I need you to recategorize a million different things here, and I need it done by tomorrow or lunchtime today or something like that, so that they can put down something on your evaluation that you failed to do this in the required time, even though it was impossible to do, but there won't be any mention to something like that. So the gatekeepers are tough in that regard. The nitpickers are exactly like it sounds. The micromanager to the 10th degree that is always in your back pocket, basically, and nothing you do is right. I had an English teacher when I was in 10th grade. This is the way she wanted us to do our vocabulary words, right? It was like number one with a semicolon, the word capitalized, underline, colon, whether it was a noun or verb in parentheses, and then the definition, and then A, B, synonym, antonym, and things like that. She said before you turn it in, she would tell you to do the first one and then bring it up to her. And you would give it to her and she'd circle one thing on it and say that's wrong and give it back to you. So you would go back and fix that one thing and then bring it back. And then she would like go to the next thing and circle it. So it took you all day to get through just the first word to gain the knowledge that you needed to succeed in that. Now, don't get me wrong. It gave me a great attention to detail, but just think of that with everything you do at work. Exactly like that every day. Emails, everything. I want you to send it to me before you send it out. I want you to do this before you talk to somebody. And that's like to the degree that they're on top of you. The screamer, that's the one that just yells at you and basically chews you out every chance they get. And again, they won't do it in front of people. They'll do it in private. They'll have the door closed. There won't be anybody else in there. So it's always going to be a he said, she said. They could call you names. They can belittle you. They can make you feel like you don't know what you're doing, even though you do. The joker, that's the one that plays all kinds of jokes on you that they think are funny. But I don't think if you came into work and let's just say the pictures of your family that were on your desk, you open your top drawer and they're in there shredded. That's funny. I was just kidding, but after a while, it gets to be ridiculous. So the joker can wear on you a lot. It's usually somebody that's jealous. It might even be somebody that's lower in the totem pole of the hierarchy of the organization than you because they're jealous of you having the position that you have, and they're trying to get that position from you. The discriminator, just call them the ist, racist, sexist, whatever kind of thing you can think of, they are that, and they definitely treat those people of different, whatever is not them, differently. If it's a white heterosexual male, that's the only thing that he's going to like. If it's a white heterosexual female, same thing. They don't see other people. They don't want to take any other stock in anybody else that might be different from them. The tyrant, pretty good name for the tyrant. They rule. They think they're sitting on the throne of their kingdom and they're ruling over the people that work for them. And it gets pretty crazy. These are the ones that really think that the rules don't apply to them. They apply to you, but they don't apply to them. And then the reverse bully was something that I only had maybe like one instance of, where it was an employee that was using the HR rules and stuff against the actual supervisor, to the point where, they were getting all kinds of preferential treatment and things like that just by pointing different things out. It was an interesting situation that I saw. So that's kind of the different characteristics. I kind of broke them down pretty quick, but if you get the gist, a bully is like a leader in every way, shape, and form. They have all the same skills, except they they kind of use them for evil. So it's kind of like Star Wars, you got the light side of the Force and the dark side of the Force. And they will use everything they have in their repertoire to get what they want.
Very interesting. I think I've worked for every one of them at some point in time in my life, or I've at least encountered them. I grew up in an all-boys neighborhood, being the only girl, of course. The behaviors were somewhat of, bullying in nature. But question for you. I do have a work colleague who always has an interesting take, no matter what communication we get into. His take is always to tell me what I'm doing wrong, and he's significantly younger than me, but he's always coming across as coaching me. Well, what you need to do, instead of just listening to my story or listening to the point that I need to say, he'll cut me off and say, well, this is what you need to do, and he turns it on to be an authoritarian, dictating what I need to do next. Is that a form of bullying?
Yes. That can be a form of bullying. I mean, because one, he's not listening. I always say that if you find yourself in a conversation with someone, with a subordinate or a leader, and instead of listening to what they're saying, you're thinking of what you're going to say back to them, you're not listening. And he's doing that to you pretty much. He's trying to dictate things to you so he can kind of show you that he knows better than you at what you're doing. Instead of just listening to you, it's like when people want to mentor someone, or people want to, what's the term I'm trying to remember for, when you're trying to get somebody to do something that they've never done before and not just dumping it on them. You want them to do it, and you want them to do it their way. And then when they come back to you and explain to you what they did and how they did it, you give them little pointers that, hey, that was really good. Did you think about trying this? I don't know if it would have worked better, but maybe it's something to think about. Like when you're giving that to him, if he would listen to the whole thing, and then he could say, hey, that's a really good idea. How about trying this as well, or incorporating it in? What do you think?
Right. Instead of engaging in a partnering collaborative dialogue.
Right.
The person always tries to take the authoritarian position, which actually shuts me up.
Yeah.
It shuts me up because there's obviously no two-way listening, no two-way communication taking place.
No, I mean, how do you feel after that encounter usually?
Frustrated.
He might have cut you off and said, you know what you ought to do? You ought to do this. And that was exactly what you were going to tell him, but he didn't give you a chance to do it. So that can be a form of bullying. Which one would that fall on?
No, I was really intrigued with the Joker. I didn't realize a Joker could be a bully, but I see where that could be a bully. Just kidding. Because again, you're taking liberties to manipulate the experiences that someone has. And that's what made me think of this gentleman, because to me, that's kind of like a Joker. Taking something that you possess, your thoughts, your pictures, whatever it might be, and then manipulating it or twisting it and just making lighthearted of it. Oh, just trying to help. I'm just trying to help, or, just making a joke.
Just kidding. Yeah.
Right. Just kidding. Yeah.
But they got their zinger in there to make you feel. The whole purpose of all of this for the bully is to have you feel as though you're inferior. They are in charge. They are the ones that have the power. They are the ones that are going to dictate everything that happens in everything that goes on in their sphere of influence. And they try to increase that sphere of influence all the time. They constantly think that people are threats to their power and their competence and their values if you don't think like they do. So they'll always use some kind of an abusive attack to neutralize anything that you're doing. If you come up with an idea in a meeting, they'll basically poo-poo it because it wasn't their idea, and then maybe even like a week later, present it as their own.
It's very interesting. What kind of bully did you have when you came out of the 21 years you spent in the Navy and submarines and was anti-bullied? Now you're in this bullying situation. What kind of bully were you up against?
Well, after I finished all my research and I had the themes and everything, I like to call him the situational bully, situational leadership. He used all of those things, every single one of them, and he would switch between them all the time. And especially if he got reported a few times, and it wasn't by me, it was by someone else. So he would switch to a different type of bully for that person, but he would continue to bully them. One thing you got to understand, bullies will retaliate 100% of the time. And it doesn't matter how much time goes by. When the opportunity is there, they will take it. They're always looking for an opportunity to kind of knock you off your game and have you look bad, especially if it makes them look good.
That's interesting. So is it a characteristic, personality gene, if you will, that is not really capable of being remediated?
You would think that bullies would be low in emotional intelligence, right? Most people would think that because they're mean and unfeeling, but I believe that they're very high in emotional intelligence. And the reason why is they understand how people feel and they know what cuts the deepest. This gentleman told me once, and he said, I really like pissing people off on Fridays because it ruins their weekend. And and then like 3 weeks later, he tried to say something to me to kind of tick me off on Friday to ruin my weekend. I said, look, you already told me your little ploy. So I said, I'm not falling for it. So go find somebody else to piss off today to make your day. Picture yourself in a sword fight, right? And you get the guy down, you disarm him and you have your sword to his throat. Most people would let him up. I win, not the bully. The bully will drive it straight through his throat, and it's over. The coup de grace. They're not gonna miss that. Not a chance. But they like to have good people under them because they make them look good. If you're on the in group, they will herd you towards them. They'll just try to keep you in control so that they can use your wits and your expertise to their advantage.
And that aligns directly with one of the items out of that Forbes article that I referenced, Tough Leadership Turned Toxic, where the bullies pick favorites. They have specific individuals that they target, and then they also have favorites. That's interesting.
Yeah, and a lot of these favorites, they will do anything that they're told to do, no matter what.
And that's why they're a favorite.
Yes. I mean, I guess that you could almost say that most bullies are right on the line of the sociopath type of personality type. They either get glee out of making people feel bad or discomforted or angry or whatever, or they just don't care how they feel. I can't really determine which one it is. I know it wears on you. It wears on you, and it takes a lot out of you. And like I said, you wake up every morning and the first thing you think is, should I call in sick today? Because I really don't want to deal with this today. And it has nothing to do with the work. Most people enjoy what they do, but they take the joy out of it because they want you to leave. You're a threat to them. You're a threat. They either want you to get fired or they want you to leave and go somewhere else, which is probably the best way to combat it, is to actually leave, not stay there any longer, look for other opportunities where this is not occurring in a culture that is positive.
It actually sounds like they are narcissists because it's all about their power.
Yes, very much so. Narcissism would be a very high on the list there for a bully, especially the tyrant.
Is there anything that someone can do when being bullied to minimize or limit the degree of bullying that they're receiving?
There's different things you can do. The first part is understanding what's happening to you. Because if you understand that, at least you understand why it's happening. You know it's futile to fight back. Even if you win, then it's a fresh battle the next day or even later on that afternoon. If you understand what's happening, at least then you can kind of
maybe prepare yourself.
Yeah, just prepare yourself. That's a good way of putting it. If you think you're going to fight back, you're going to lose. I can tell you right now, you're going to lose. It takes all my leadership abilities to, counteract that. I mean, he was my direct supervisor, so it was very difficult.
Right. But your story goes on because I happen to know the story. So why don't you tell the listeners the rest of the story? Because I find that quite intriguing.
So as the story goes, I did leave. I took an opportunity with a different department. I had to leave. It was getting to the point where I was going to just quit. Who can just quit a job without having something already lined up and things like that, So an opportunity came in a different department, and I went to that department. I was fortunate enough to get the job. It was a much better culture. A lot of my ideas and things were appreciated, and I got a lot of opportunities to grow in different ways. Being in a different department, you're doing different things, and your experience in where I was helped me to see things differently than a lot of the people that work with me. And I got to mentor people, which was really great, and they mentored me, and it was very, very good. And then lo and behold, an opportunity came to go back to the department I had left. I took it. I took the opportunity. I interviewed and got the job, and I became my Bullies supervisor. So that was different. If I thought working for him was hard, being his supervisor was even harder because I got to see the other side of it now. He was treating people, but he was not doing it around me. He came across as being very helpful. What I saw was this hardworking guy, but I knew better. So I could ask some of the people that work for him how things were going and things like that. Sure enough that he was up to his old tricks, and I was going to switch all the supervisors around to different contracts, and he decided he didn't want to do that, so he retired. Things have changed immensely now. We have a much better culture. We celebrate our victories together. Everyone helps everybody, and it's a really good place to work, and I'm proud of that.
That's great. So I have two more questions in regard to that point you just made. One is, and I know that we're going through with the new presidential administration, we're going through some changes, but we still have, in the day and age of diversity, inclusion, equity, inclusion, DEI, inclusion to me is a big thing. I believe a good culture in a corporation, because the corporation is made of a myriad of people, it requires all people to be aligned in the same direction, working towards the same group of strategic initiatives with the same core values, core competencies. That's what drives an organization, because that organization is an entity comprised of a number of people. So you need that healthy culture that you just referenced. And I think a good core value for that healthy culture, regardless of the fate of DEI in the future, is inclusion. Everyone should be included. Wouldn't you think, in regard to the comment that you made at the beginning, having worked in HR and understanding some of the mechanisms that HR has to handle and regulatory requirements they have to deal with, and they are all about the organization, I totally agree with you. Wouldn't inclusion and alignment to a viable culture play a part in mitigating bullying behavior?
I agree. Oh, I think so. I believe in treating everybody equally, the same as a person, I use a lot of what I learned as a leader in the military as my basis for how I do things. I guess you could say it would be situational leadership and servant leadership. I'm there to help them become the best they can be type thing, like the commercial. You want to put people in situations where they're going to succeed. You want to establish a culture where everybody feels welcome. When I was interviewing for the position, I was asked a question that I thought was very interesting. I was asked, what does success look like? And I said, success to me is everybody comes to work because they want to. They enjoy coming to their job and doing the work that they do. And if everybody feels good about it and coming to work, being part of the team, the rest will all fall into place. People need to enjoy what they're doing. I know we call it work, but there's no reason why it should be such a burden on anyone. Yes, we're going to face challenges. Yes, we're going to face the tough decisions and things like that. But if we do it as a team together and everybody's propping everybody up, that's success. You've heard of the leadership by geese, right? Everybody takes a turn being in the front. Everybody takes a turn leading based on what the situation is. You might have somebody that is better at one thing and it's their turn to kind of come to the front to lead, in that particular situation. And then the situation changes and someone else steps forward to be the leader in that situation. So, and everybody's helping everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It says a lot when you go into a situation, everybody has your back and everybody wants to start together and finish together and come out on top. There's not a lot more that you could ask. So I guess I approach things as the military as a team, like in sports, football and things like that, because that's just what put me where I am today. You put your weakest people in the front. That was one thing that you learned right away, because they want you to run and finish together. And in the beginning, all the fast runners were taking off like a rocket, and they're yelling at the guys that were slow. No, you put the slow guys in the front and we all kind of move at their pace. And eventually they become stronger because they're in the front and they're leading and they feel good about themselves. And then they start to get better. And then the whole team starts moving faster together.
Oh, I love that analogy, actually. You put your slower people out front. I love that because, to your point, it entices them to grow. And that's the whole geese mentality, I believe, is what you were referring to. So we talked earlier about laissez-faire being the leadership style that enables bullies. What's the leadership style that would best prevent the existence of bully behavior?
I would probably go with the servant or transformational type leader. Well, the servant leader puts, his followers ahead of him or her. They're the most important thing, and it's more nurturing, and that they care about the people in their group and they want to develop people. Doing that keeps the bullies away because you're developing other servant leaders. That becomes the prevalent culture in the unit. That's not to say that there's little pockets of other things going on. My organization is very large. There's a lot of different departments and a lot of different leaders in different departments. And, some of those departments I barely interface with. So it's tough for what I'm doing to bleed over to them. But it can, right? It can, because people see you having success. They ask why. You explain to them how you do things. Hey, that's a great idea. I think I'll try that. I think most people care. Your bullies go back to that theory X manager, the guy who suspects that no one would ever do anything if I didn't stand over him and watch constantly. That's kind of the bully's mentality, is that theory X manager, which was very prevalent in the 60s, 70s, and the 80s. Things have changed now. I think you see less of it, but they have good short-term success because they got the whip out. They're getting people to the finish line for a short-term type project, and they might have success, and then you get a foothold and they go from there. Yeah, I think servant leadership, that would be my number one type leadership style that I think would help combat that.
Right. When you were in the Navy on the submarine, do you believe that you were all somewhat servant leaders, or do you think it was because it was a group of people in a very tight quarter and you knew you needed to get along and work together. Do you think it was just the environment, or do you really think it was a prevalence of leadership style?
Well, I think the environment helps. I can't speak for other commands. Like an aircraft carrier has, thousands of people on board. Your average submarine has about 160. There is an inherent closeness there that probably inspires a more servant type culture than maybe the rest of the Navy. So I really can't speak on other commands. I'm never going to say that I didn't run into, I wouldn't call them bullies, but I would call them authoritarian type things. But that was part of the military. There was times when, you had to be an authoritarian. But when you're given orders, we don't have time to debate those and decide what's the best thing. You just have to take that order and go with it, because it could be in some kind of a situation that's an emergency or combat or something to that effect. The switch would flip and then you would go more authoritarian. But for the most part, you have to build your sailors. You're training them to take your spot. Whereas in corporate America, a lot of times people are afraid of sharing knowledge because that person might take their spot before they're ready to give it up. In the Navy, you're taught to always keep getting yourself promoted to the next level, and then you're turning it over to the next guy below you, and they need to be ready. So it's up to you to develop them and make them ready. Pull out those guys that have the talent to do it and try to pay more attention, and put them in situations where they can succeed. And then your weaker links, you want to build them up, because it's true. You're only as strong as your weakest link. So you have to put a lot of effort into them. But, that goes back to knowing your people. You got to understand them. You have to understand what their needs are. You have to understand where their strengths are and their weaknesses are, and what drives them, what motivates them. And knowing all that about them, you can guide them in the correct ways and give them the help they need to succeed and get better. I know I approach everything that way. I approach my current job that way. I look at my team and I assess them and I try to give them what they need in order to succeed. And when they succeed, I give them the credit. I don't take credit for that stuff. I don't need the credit. I give everything to them. I want them to shine. And that makes a big difference as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been great chatting with you, Dr. Rick. I'm wondering, do you have anything else that you would like to share with our listeners in regard to bullying before we end the episode?
I'll just say that if you find yourself in a position to where you're being bullied, it's a very tough situation to be. But based on your organization or the nature of it, probably the only thing that you can really do is get away from it. Try to find another position or another job or something to that effect, especially if that person is seen as being a good leader within the organization. You're going to have a really hard time convincing other people that they're not, because they're not going to show other people that. It's a very, very difficult situation to be in. My heart really goes out to people that are in that position. It's hard to combat. It really is. You can kill them with kindness and it still won't work. I was called a goodwill country when I was nice to people. So it's tough. It's really tough. About the only thing you can do is leave. I hate to say that, but it's really the truth. But you can try. You can try using HR. You can try EO and things like that, and just document what's happening to you and try to do the best you can to stay out of any kind of direct confrontations. They thrive on that.
Again, I think it goes back to the narcissism in a bully, because it's all about them. It's not about the other. And having been in a couple of bully situations myself over the years,
I will say this. I'll leave you with this. If you're in a position to where you're being bullied, feel good about your threat to them. Okay. So you must be good at what you do, and they perceive you as a threat. So know that you can find yourself a job somewhere else doing what you do. And there are people out there that will appreciate it. And it could be in your own organization, just in a different department or something to that effect.
Very wise advice. Very wise advice. Well, it's been great catching up with you. We're going to have you back because I know there's other topics that you're an expert on, and I can't wait to engage in those as well. Thanks again, Dr. Bame. Appreciate it.
It was my pleasure, and anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Sterling Visionary Voices, Insights for Role Model Leadership from the Sterling Council. Discover more and connect with us at sterlingvisionaryvoices.com.